He's never fought us. Not us united.
My favorite moment in the entire... Maybe I should complicate this before I start speaking here.
Welcome to Under Two Capes. I'm Jared. I'm here with Nick from the Phoenix Press. What's up, brother?
Not much.
And today we have a very special guest, again, provided by Nick because he's connected to everyone, apparently. Mike Barron. How you doing, Mike?
Doing good.
All right. So you may know Mike Barron for his work on one of the characters that Marvel tries to forget exists, but he's got a skull and uses guns, the Punisher. So I kind of want to start off by asking you, Mike, what do you think of like the logo change and all that?
Starting off strong, I see.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's just so stupid because I'm like, why? There was no reason to change this besides the fact that you just don't like the character. We get it.
That's right. They're embarrassed by the Punisher.
Yeah, because he's a hero that uses guns. Really? So only bad people use guns. Oh, okay. That's a good note, guys.
It seems to me that there's also kind of an element of like owning the conservatives kind of stuff, because like you see a lot of military personnel and like police people use a symbol. And that's kind of something I wanted to get your thoughts on. Why is it, in your opinion, that you think like military and police are drawn to using that symbol for the Punisher for their stuff? Like, why do you think that is, in your opinion?
The symbol to the military and the police is we represent justice. We will protect the innocent. I know this because I have many police friends and they've told me. We also have the example of Chris Kyle, American sniper, who used the Punisher logo. He said they plastered that logo all over Afghanistan to let the enemy know that justice was coming.
It was like all of SEAL Team 3, I think, just spray painted that on all their gear, everything, their gun mags, everything. And it's so cool because you see American Sniper, you can kind of take that as like everyone's just Punisher except Navy. But so another thing I want to ask you is that what do you think Marvel traditionally gets wrong about the Punisher character, or like the general public as well gets wrong about, because it seems like all they see him as like a mass shooter, in other words.
Yes, that's true. I have to tell you, I haven't read a modern Punisher comic in many years, so I don't know what's going on. I hear reports about it. But I'll tell you what the character is. It's a very simple character to get right. He's an American vigilante in the tradition of Wyatt Earp, Kit Carson, Charles Bronson's Paul Kersing, Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry. And these characters are part of the American mythology. They were necessary to the taming of the West because as settlers headed west, they were way ahead of the law. I mean, the law follows civilization, and they were not civilization. They were the very fringe of civilization. And the law doesn't get established until you establish a city, a town, whatever, and you give people citizenship and civic responsibility, and they decide, well, now we need a police force. Well, why do we need a police force? Because there's evil in the world, and we need a force to deal with it. It's not the ideal solution because we all know there are bad cops. We all know there are bad cops.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The Punisher's not one of them.
There's no denying. See, that's the thing that I think is lost in the discourse. No one is denying that there's bad cops. Like when this stuff happens, where like people get beaten to death, no one is calling that no reasonable person is calling that a good thing. We all think it's a tragedy, Like we see those people as bad cops. The problem is, people think all cops are bad. The ACAB mentality.
Well, there are people who do think that.
It's stupid.
That was the subject of your other yes. So speaking of that, which by the way, I liked how this book is basically making fun of a lot of the political issues of the time, like mass, the gender thing, and I'm like, Very clever. I love that. The
Were,
peaceful
were you
protest. and all
not
that.
entertained?
Yes, I was entertained. As a matter of fact.
That's
Yeah.
my number one goal. With every book I write,
Yeah.
the number one
So-
job is to entertain the reader.
So wait.
So-
So Mike,
oh.
basically what you did is you walked into an arena and went,
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I had that queued
That
up.
was perfect. That was perfect.
Yes,
that
thank
was perfect,
you.
Jared.
You were ready for that.
Yes, I was.
So,
Thank
Mike,
you.
going off of what Jared was just kind of showing you the book you made, what drove you to indie? Like, what kind of brought you to this space? I mean, obviously you were with Marvel, so what kind of caused you to leave Marvel and come to indie space? Can you kind of tell
Well,
us
I
about
kind
that?
of fell out of the system in the mid 90s through nobody's fault but my own. I didn't understand how to sustain a career. I'm not sure I do now, although I feel very lucky these days.
So many
Pretty
people
well.
are trying to figure that out.
But today, their editors and their writers, I assume many of them are very young and have been born in the 90s and more recently. I don't expect them to have knowledge of what has gone before. Although in my day, every comic book reader and professional had thorough knowledge of what went on before, the entire history of comics, starting with the Yellow Kid. The editors for whom I worked, Archie Goodwin, Denny O'Neil, they were writers first. Denny was a journalist too. So they
Denny is an
understood,
idol of mine.
they understood how to tell a story. And that was important to them. Carl Potts, likewise. Carl Potts, when he asked me to write The Punisher, he said, all I ask is that the stories make sense, that there are no non sequiturs, there are no deus ex machinas, the stories make sense. I approached that book as a straight crime comic. I had nothing to do with science fiction, monsters, the Hulk, the Thing. There were a couple of guest appearances by Doc Doom and the Kingpin, but they're natural to Punisher's world. And even Doc Doom, you can imagine him fitting into a real world if that metal is light enough for him to walk around in. But there were no super heroics in my Punisher world for the first 3 years. And then I got a new editor, and he was a gimmick guy, God bless him. And he had a whole bunch of covers commissioned. And then he presented the covers to me and said, I want you to write stories around these covers. And since half the covers were by Michael Golden, I said, okay. And I didn't have a problem with that.
And that's I definitely detected that whenever I read your Punisher book, is that it's basically you could essentially take off the Marvel logo from the book, and it's just a straight up like dude solving crimes. And what's kind of funny how I say it's a straight up crime comic without any like crazy superpowers. Where now they gave the Punisher superpowers, so I'm like, you just defeated the purpose of the book. Because
I wouldn't know.
The thing that I really the thing about the Punisher, the reason why I think he works in the general Marvel universe is that he does what they're not willing to do. In other words, he'll go and like wipe out a Hydra cell totally fine. He has absolutely no problem just murking people.
Well, I think he had a firm grasp of right and wrong. When I wrote him, he was a devout Catholic, and he sought absolution regularly. He went into church for confession. In fact, there's a whole issue about that called Holy Terror, and that kept him grounded. But it seemed to me to be a natural outgrowth of his personality. Is when I thought about Frank Castle. I realized that the name Castle is an Americanization of a foreign name, which I envisioned as Castiglione, and I placed the Punisher's origins in Sicily.
That works.
Ooh.
What were you gonna ask, Nick?
When you talked about him like being the Catholic stuff, that's kind of a character trait that we kind of associate with Daredevil a lot. Like, did you ever write any stories where like because like Punisher does team up with Daredevil a lot? What do you see as like their connection, those two?
Well, the only stories I wrote about Daredevil were when he crossed over into the Punisher's world, and I wrote a couple of them. But the only thing that Daredevil has with Punisher, well, they have a lot in common. They're both champions of the oppressed, the little guy who can't get justice from the justice system. And neither one of them has superpowers, although in Daredevil's case, that's arguable because realistically speaking, a blind man would not be able to do what he did unless he had like built-in sonar like a bat, so that he could feel the objects in front of him and gauge their distance and their texture. And that's the only way that he could function as he does.
Yeah, like the way that I always kind of saw Daredevil is like the mutagenic basically kind of thing, like heightened all of his other senses. You know, because like there's kind of like that thing of like when a blind person, like their other sightings are better. Like they kind of like, I think Stan Lee kind of took that concept and like bumped it up to 11 kind of. And that's kind of how I see Daredevil.
Hang on one second, guys. I got to put on a hat. I'm getting blinded here.
It's all good. So Nick, yeah. So that is also a good point, because it's that is honestly an interesting point about Daredevil, because yeah, I always saw him as like having a bat sonar. But another thing.
My follow-up question. Oh, go
ahead.
You go ahead, Jared. I did my question.
Another thing I wanted to ask is, like, did you happen to like check the Punisher show on Netflix with Jon Bernthal? And if so, what do you think as someone that works for so long on the character?
Well, I thought that Jon Bernthal was very good as a character. The show itself, it didn't grab me. I was watching the first season, and it just took too long to get where it was going. And there was all this stuff with Microchip, where Microchip was alienated, and they get together, and Punisher threatens him so that he'll work with him. And there wasn't enough of Punisher rescuing innocent people from bad situations. But as far as Jon Bernthal, he was a good Punisher. To my mind, Ray Stevenson was the best Punisher in Punisher Original. Not a good movie, but Stevenson killed it. And I'd love to have seen him in a serious Punisher movie. And for people who want to know why can't they do a good Punisher movie, I don't know why they can't. But if you're looking for the greatest Punisher movie ever made, it's called The Equalizer, starring Denzel Washington.
Yeah, yes. I was about to say that's pretty much Punisher, but yeah, I guarantee you.
Skull, just put Denzel Washington in a Skull T-shirt.
There you go. You got the Punisher. That's the race bet I'm okay with. But it's like, yeah. The reason why I think that they don't do a good Punisher story is because who runs Hollywood, and we all know about how half the population sees anyone that uses guns and has a skull thing. Another thing I think was interesting about Frank is how he idolizes Captain America, who I always saw as like a more like a more, I don't want to say more righteous, but I kind of will, but a little bit of a more like less like I'm gonna shoot you in the face version of the Punisher, kind of. If you catch what I'm going for here.
I think that we'll never see another Punisher movie because Marvel finds the character problematic.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can see that in the changes they're working on him today, so that he's virtually unrecognizable. But that's fine. That's why I wrote Private American. So if you're looking for the Punisher, back my book, Private American. You can find it at theprivateamerican.com. And I asked myself, what would he be doing if I were writing him? And he would be down on the southern border, interrupting the flow of human traffickers, fentanyl, and terrorists that are flowing into the country. Now, apparently, this is a forbidden topic. Nobody is allowed to mention the southern border. And as you know, the Daily Cause attacked me, and they called the book racist. They've never read it. They called Thin Blue Line racist. In fact, they characterized Thin Blue Line as a book about, quote, white police officers going into black neighborhoods to kill as many blacks as possible. Now, you read the book.
No.
Jared, you read the book. The police officers don't kill anyone in that book.
Not really, and it's not. First off, it's not about white police officers. That's the first part. I'll go like, well, that's not that. And second off, yeah, they don't go into a neighborhood and just light people up. They're trying to get out of a neighborhood.
Kind of reminds me of the controversy when Rambo Last Blood came out, where it's like Rambo versus the cartels and how much heat that got.
Well, I mean, it's not like the cartels aren't a big fat target.
Yeah. It's not like the cartels are all bad people.
And, you know, that's part of Private American, too. The cartels play a large part down there.
They do.
They're the ones that are mixing the chemicals that China sends them and turning out the fentanyl. Last year, there were 120,000 deaths from fentanyl overdoses in the United States. 90% of that fentanyl came across the southern border with no opposition, no one checking, no one caring.
Yeah. So,
have you seen the videos where like they just open the gate, let them come through? You have guards just standing there, and they're just walking in a single file line, all calmly. I'm like, what the frick?
Yeah, I know it's crazy, and common sense seems to be in short supply. Because 20 years ago, I mean, it's understood even by a child that no organism, neither a single cell nor a nation, can survive without controlling its borders. That's just common sense.
And here's the thing, like I keep on going about the average person, but like I feel like the average person doesn't mind immigration. Like if you want to come to this country,
absolutely,
and you want to like be a part of our country, and you know, I'll be the first one to welcome you to the board. Like in my thing, one of the most beautiful things ever is a swearing-in ceremony where people swearing in to be citizens.
Absolutely,
I think that's like one of the most beautiful things ever. The problem is you're crossing the border illegally. It is a crime. I mean, I'm not speaking preach to the choir here. I realize that.
Yeah.
But like,
you're right.
It's just such. It's like I get what you're saying. Like common sense. To me, it just seems like such a no-brainer, obvious thing. Like,
and here's the thing, though. As far as from what I've seen of this particular project, and I've watched EVS's streams where you guys have talked about this. It's like not once do you paint illegal immigrants in general as bad people. You're hyper focusing on a vigilante going after the bad people. You specifically designate the cartels as the bad people, and I'm like, that shouldn't be a problem.
No,
it makes.
But we do have a problem with common sense these days.
Yeah.
You know, as Frank Zappa said, there used to be a class called civics in high school, in which you were required to study the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, because you don't know what your rights are until you see them enumerated in the Constitution. And the Constitution says that our rights don't come from any government, they come from God. And we now have a government that hates the Bill of Rights and doesn't want people to know about it because they want to be in control of everything.
To them, the Bill of Rights is their toilet paper.
Thin Blue Line was born of a similar impulse when I heard politicians, people who swore to uphold the Constitution as part of their oath of office, calling for defunding the police. And my response was immediate and visceral.
So stupid.
What the f***? You know, you're either for the rule of law or you're not. And civilization can't exist without the rule of law. Again, there are always abuses. We know there are bad cops. The book is not about them. And no system is perfect. But in this country, it seemed to work for an awful long time.
Yeah, and like regarding the immigration thing, can we have a discussion about like maybe changing the system to make it like a little bit easier for you to come to the system? Or a pathway? Like, yeah, we can have that discussion. Like, sure, you know, but like just straight out allowing illegal immigration is just no. It's
unsustainable. But anyway, yeah, it's like I detected that because it's like back in like 2020, when I first saw this, it was like, okay, so there's so much anti-cop stuff when, like Nick said, the reasonable person is going to say, yeah, there's bad people in any group of human beings. Literally, if you put a group of human beings in a room, a few of those people will probably be like will probably be bad people to a certain degree. But with this book, it's like, no, there's some good cops. So I'm like, I don't see what the problem is. It's just as long as it said Thin Blue Line, which apparently is a problematic thing. I'm like, yeah, that's racist. And I'm like, okay, did you actually read the book? The answer is no. Like you said, Mike. Yeah, but
sorry. So Mike, let's like walking it back a little bit. What drove you to comics in the first place? Like, what kind of drove you to the medium? Like, how did you kind of fall into this, or what?
Oh, I always wanted to do comics and novels. I grew up in Mitchell, South Dakota, and I remember getting an Uncle Scrooge comic off a spinner rack at a drugstore. And I read that and I thought, oh,
Karl
holy
Barks.
cow, this is storytelling. And anybody who wants to understand how to do a comic should study the work of Karl Barks, one of the greatest creators who has ever worked in comics. He wrote and illustrated his own stories, Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge, and he researched them thoroughly, especially with copies of National Geographic. Karl didn't travel much, but when he drew a scene like the Valley of the Tombs in Egypt, or Machu Picchu in Peru, his pictures just smacked you in the face. That's why they have full page spreads for things like that show you a fantastic place beautifully brought to life. And not only that, but his characterizations were brilliant. His stories were well thought out. There's not a wasted panel or word in any of Karl Barks' work. Then when I got to college, some friends showed me Steranko.
Oh, yeah.
The Steranko Nick Furies. And I could not believe the power of his illustrations. I'd never seen anything like that before. Many people hadn't. And it showed you what the comics medium could do in the hands of a brilliant creator. And shortly after that, I discovered the work of Neil Adams, and I was hooked. So I was buying comics through all that period, especially in the 70s and 80s, when Barry Smith and Bernie Wrightson and Paul Galassi were exploding on the scene. I couldn't get enough of their art, and so I bought all those books. I often bought 5 copies of the book at a time because they were only 35 cents, and kept them for many years. But even then, even reading these books, I sensed that the stories were not as good as the illustrations. I say for the most part, the Conan comics were pretty good because Roy was adapting Robert E. Howard stories, and it was How to Go Wrong. But in the case of Master of Kung Fu, even before I started training, I knew instinctively they weren't showing any Kung Fu. They weren't showing any martial arts. And this is a visual medium. And there's a way to do that in an exciting and dynamic manner, which is both realistic and galvanizing as you see a technique unfold in panel after panel, and not just this Hulk thing where a big fist swings across the panel up in your face, a big fist, and there are 5 sets of feet flying off panel. I mean, that's cool. That's a comic book trope, and it works in a certain type of story. But comics are what you make of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want to make that martial arts scene part of the story and use it to characterize and also to show real techniques that are going to make people go, whoa, I've never seen that before, then you got to be careful about it, and you got to do it in a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like going off of comics or what you make them is like I still have people that think that when I tell them I read and collect comics, they're like, nerd. Or it's like I as of a year ago, I finally convinced my parents that like comics are a legitimate art form and like not like books for kids, because when you see comics, yeah, a lot of the like Superman wears his underwear on the outside of his pants for no reason, but it's like, yeah, it looks stupid, but like, but when you actually read, that's why I say when you read stories like Blackest Night or read any of like the Punisher stories, I'm like, I'm pretty sure these aren't just for kids. You got to do that is shooting criminals in the face. Yeah, that's not for kids.
Well, I think the world knows that now, especially with the advent of post-underground comics works like Art Spiegelman's Mouse or Bill Griffith's Hidden Figures, which is an autobiographical story about growing up and his mother having a secret affair that lasted for years with a very famous cartoonist, and books like Persepolis, which show us the situation in the Middle East. But these are outside what most comic fans like. They're outside the world of horror, superheroes, and war or westerns. War comics and western comics have always been popular, but they've always been less popular than superheroes. Because comics are the most forgiving medium on earth. You can get away with things in comics you couldn't in any other medium. And Superman is the proof. Superman used to sell 4 to 8 million copies an issue back in the 40s and 50s. And we look at those books, and they're not the most sophisticated books in the world, especially
he's pulling a solar system on a chain.
Yeah. But they had their heyday, and I think there was a great age in the 80s and 90s, but now we're in a desert for the most part, and the big two are circling the drain, and there's some question whether they'll continue publishing at all. But in the meantime, there's a group of us who include many highly regarded comic professionals who don't even bother with the traditional world of publishing, appealing to publishers like Marvel or DC. We crowdfund our own books because we tell the stories that we want to tell, and we're doing very well. And comics will always be with us, regardless of whether they disappear off the spinner racks. They haven't been there in years, or whether the comic stores all fold. And I hope that doesn't happen. And I hope that they will transition into selling books outside the mainstream. And I know that some shops do. Some shops are ordering Thin Blue Line and Florida Man and stocking them, and they can't keep them on the shelf.
I can actually attest. So I'm in Michigan, and I've actually seen Florida Man on a store shelf in a comic shop in Michigan, and like literally a shop 20 minutes from where I'm sitting right now here in Michigan. I have seen a copy of Florida Man, like in person.
And
so,
I'm in Florida, so I am actually a Florida man, and I'll let you know if I ever when I find one in any LCS near me.
Well,
I'm like, I have seen Florida Man in the wild, so you're doing great.
But yeah, and that's the other thing, because it's like with crowdfunding, because I've also talked to Gabe El Taib, and he said the same thing. It's like, yeah, you can pretty much do whatever you want as long as like aligns with something the audience is interested in. Really, audience, when you think about it, is your editors, because they'll tell you, okay, I like this, I don't like this. So really, it's like you have significantly more freedom, because you don't have to worry about because like someone like you, Mike, with your experience, you have a built-in audience that will follow you anywhere, and then they know you're going to give them a high quality story. Where with Marvel and DC, having that DC logo and Marvel logo, like you said, is not exactly an endorsement of skill anymore.
No, and nobody mentions the 800-pound gorilla in the room of why comics are dwindling. It's video games. We have a generation that's grown up that never got into the habit of reading comics. They were grabbed by video games, and video games hold on tightly. The fact is that a really good video game is far more entertaining than your average Big Two comic.
And True. I mean, there's also the other thing, the other 800-pound gorilla in the room, manga. Like, I think I remember seeing somewhere where like they talk about how we never had a chance to grab the younger generation. The younger generation, instead of going to DC or Marvel, they went to manga. They read Shonen Jump. They read all those manga, and now that's what they like. What are your kind of thoughts on like the manga versus comic kind of?
Well, I gotta say, guys, that I don't read manga, so I'm not really qualified to comment, unless Lone Wolf and Cub qualifies. I thought that was a great strip. That was a long time ago. So I don't know. I don't know. I look at the art. The art doesn't appeal to me. I think it's an acquired taste, because I grew up with Barry Smith and Paul Galassi and Neil Adams, and that's the kind of art that appeals to me.
Yeah, that's
and remember, there's another 800-pound gorilla. It's called the movie industry, because it's like you now have like 8,000 Batman movies, like the MCU, which is now circling the drain, but continues to pump out movies despite their obvious decrease in quality. But my point is that you now have people that there's an audience that doesn't know that like Iron Man was a comic book character and wasn't like this key of Marvel anymore.
Or even worse, for 10 years, Marvel had the world's attention. They were the biggest thing. And basically you had people going to comic shop being like, I want to read about Tony Stark. Oh, Tony Stark's dead. Here's this Riri Williams. Oh, I want to read about Bruce Banner. Oh, Bruce Banner's not the Hulk anymore. We have this totally awesome Hulk, Amadeus Cho.
I want to read about Thor. Who the hell is Jane Foster?
At the height of their popularity, they recasted all their most. I'm sorry. I'm getting.
No, it's all good.
This is what happens when you hire editors who aren't familiar with the history of the medium and don't know how to tell a story. I got to tell you guys, though, that the movie industry is circling the drain, too. At least insofar as traditional theaters go. Theaters have just been struggling throughout this pandemic, with good reason, but it's been exacerbated by the low quality of the movies that Hollywood has been producing. There are not many movies out there that you got to see. I mean, they seem to be going after niche groups, this traditionally marginalized group or that traditionally marginalized group. And so many of the movies seem like scolds.
Mm-hmm.
That's
true.
It's why when Top Gun Maverick came out,
I was about to mention that.
Where like I like Top Gun Maverick, but like it's an okay movie. But the fact that it did a decent, like it's a decent enough story. It does what it needs to do. Like if you compare this movie to like a movie even came out like 90s, early 2000s, it's an okay average movie at best. But we compare it to like stuff that's coming out now.
It's Oscar Best Picture worthy at that point. Or it's like even with Avatar, and I'm like, well, Avatar kind of has become like you have to see this movie to be culturally relevant. So I'm not sure if that's like the best example.
I'm not culturally relevant then.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay. But with Top Gun, it's like
your dog doesn't like bad movies. We know.
Yeah, exactly. But it's with Top Gun, it's like, yeah, you can have a simple enough storyline because when you look at Top Gun, it's a very simple story. But as long as it's not preaching to you and is like naturally diverse and such, and no one cares. Everyone's like, okay, let's go see this movie.
There are good movies out there. They are being made. You just have to search for them. I'd like to recommend a couple.
Sure.
Yeah.
One is Let Him Go, starring Kevin Costner and Diane Lane. It's the thriller set in the 60s about a couple whose son dies in a horse accident and whose daughter-in-law remarries into an evil family and takes the 6-year-old boy away, and they have to go to North Dakota and get him back. Another is RRR. It's an Indian movie. It's about the fight against colonialism, and it has absolutely jaw-dropping action scenes, and it's a musical.
Oh, it's a Bollywood movie is what you're saying.
It should have been nominated for Best Picture. It's truly phenomenal.
Yeah, from all like the clips I've seen of that movie, it's very comic booky in that there's stuff that makes no sense in the action scenes, and that's how I qualify what's a comic book movie. It's like you could have something that's not based on a comic book, and you could have something that's absolutely not based on a comic book whatsoever, but if it has like the most ridiculous stuff ever happening in the action scenes, I'm like, it's a comic book movie at this point.
Dramatically, it does track and make sense. I mean, there are physical stunts in there that are impossible, and you wonder how they filmed them. But dramatically, it's cohesive.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, we're doing a sequel, which I look forward to.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm like, well, yeah, India seems to be doing it right with action movies, but it's like, but it just astounds me that, like, let me put it this way: it astounds me with like Marvel and DC, they can't get their act together with the movies. I mean, DC is kind of doing that. Like, what are your thoughts on like the new like DC slate that James Gunn announced? If you have been tracking,
I can't comment, guys, because I haven't seen a comic book movie in about 7 or 8 years.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Well, wait, let me think about that. I should watch a couple because I can get them on streaming. But I'm just not interested. It's not the movies, it's me. And the reason is I'm in a place in my life where I have to believe that the story could happen for me to really enter into it fully. And that doesn't mean that it has to be ultra realistic, although I like those movies too, because I love Alien and Aliens. If you take those movies on their own terms, they're superb. And there's nothing in them to jolt you out of your suspension of disbelief. You are in that world and you believe it totally down to the last bolt.
So as you said that, one movie I would recommend you check out is The Batman, the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson one.
Very realistic.
I do think that one might be right up your alley.
I'll take a look. I tried watching it, but it was like being trapped in a coal mine for a while.
Yeah, it's a little long. Another movie I think that'll be right up your alley is I don't know if you've seen the 2 Sicario movies that are pretty much about like the southern border.
I love the Sicario movies. In fact,
those are awesome.
I've only seen the
that's
first
Taylor
one,
Sheridan, the guy who does Yellowstone.
Yeah, Nick, you got to see Sicario 2 because it takes Sicario 1 then ratchets it up like another
I
level.
like the first one. I like the first Sicario. I thought it was
yeah.
really good.
Oh yeah.
I have good news. Equalizer 3 is releasing this fall.
Yes.
Have you seen John Wick? What are your thoughts on John Wick?
I
Because
thought
John
the
Wick has a
first
lot of
John
Punisher
Wick was an enjoyable. Hang on a second. Anna's going out the garage door. I'm just going to mute this for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because John Wick is pretty much Keanu Reeves / Neo as the Punisher. That's pretty much what he is.
I will admit the series. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The second one was okay. The third one jumped the shark. I mean, what's the high table? I never did figure that out. It was so ridiculous. It was so wrapped up in its own arcane world of bad guys and villains and untethered to reality that you can only watch it to appreciate the technical expertise.
True.
Yeah, like I feel like they kind of learned the wrong lessons from the movie because everyone was saying like, oh, this underworld of like assassins is so interesting, and like, yeah, it is, but people didn't watch John Wick 1 for the world. Like the world was interesting, it drew you in, but they watched it because it's a great story of a man driven by love. You know, it's a good story. The first movie is a good story.
And when you watch the movie, Keanu Reeves clearly did his homework on how to handle a firearm. Like when you watch that, and there are clips of him going to actual gun ranges and like learning how to rapidly shoot, and the way he handles a firearm, you see reloads. I'm like, yeah, this dude knows what he's doing here.
I guess you could say he has quite the silver hand.
Oh, Nick.
Okay, Mike, I need to explain that. I don't know if because like Keanu Reeves was in the video game Cyberpunk 2077 and he played Johnny Silverhand. So that's a joke.
It's just another example of Nick making really like crappy puns, honestly. He does that all the time.
Sorry, I guess the stream's going down the drain.
Oh, it went there a long time ago. But anyway, so I wanted to also touch on really Comicsgate in general because I asked Gabe this, and Comicsgate kind of gets like a bad rap as like a air quote hate group. But what I want to ask you, as someone that's in the movement, like how would you describe Comicsgate to the average person?
Well, Comicsgate is a big tent, and the problem is that anybody can claim to be Comicsgate. All they got to do is slap that Comicsgate hashtag on their Twitter file. And put out a comic. And I said, comics are the most forgiving medium in the world. And she said, everybody wants to do a comic, and everybody does. But that doesn't mean they're all good. But the Comicsgate kings are all established professionals. And I know from speaking with them and from reading what they put out that their primary goal is to entertain. And that's what's important. And this thing about racism, or whatever it is, it's irrational hatred generated by a group that thrives on hatred.
Jealousy.
Because none of these people are racists. The books aren't racist. They often feature characters of every race and persuasion, and those characters are not in there as tokens, but as integral, fully realized personalities.
I mean, EVS is accused of being misogynist, but like the main human character of Cyberfrog is a woman who's not exploited at all. She's like she's like essentially Ellen Ripley if she teamed up with an alien frog. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And I love like people calling me misogynist when I literally have a book about a 19-year-old woman who becomes a superhero to save her father. And in my other comic book, it's like the main partner is a woman, and I'm like, I'm a really bad misogynist. Like seriously,
it's funny.
Nick, you don't have to proclaim these things. It's pointless to proclaim them. You have to assume that everybody's a decent human being until they prove otherwise.
That's that's my mindset as well. Honestly,
my whole thing is that I don't care if you're Comicsgate or not, if you're really Comicsgate or not. As long as you're a nice person, I'll associate with you. That's why I've had Gabe on the channel multiple times. I'm like, he's a cool dude.
Yeah, Gabe's an old friend of mine. He used to live out here.
When I first interviewed him, by the way, real quick. So I decided, okay, I'll get a couple of books from my shelf over there that have been colored by him, so I can show I've done his work. The stack is like this high because he's done it for so long, and I'm like, all of this.
I'd love to have him color one of my books, except I don't think we can afford him yet.
One day you'll get there.
Well, he did
It'll be
color.
good
He did color the cover to Private American.
Awesome. So what are you gonna ask, Nick?
But yeah. Sorry, you go ahead.
But so, Mike, I want to tell you, I got accused of being misogynist once just for proposing that Lois Lane that the marriage to Lois Lane leads to stale storytelling because of the way it's written now, and Superman is better placed with Wonder Woman as opposed to Lois Lane. Think about that. I got accused of being misogynist for saying Superman works better with the symbol of feminism.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, I know.
You want to know how
I don't
much
care.
The symbol feminism Wonder Woman is? So for the inaugural issue of Ms. Magazine, a feminist magazine, you want to know who put in the cover on the inaugural issue? Yeah, that happened in like the 70s. You know, that is how much of a symbol of feminism Wonder Woman is.
That's like, at this point, I just ignore people that like make obviously false accusations against people, because if I like this way, Gabe gets accused of stuff all the time that's not true because I've talked to the guy, and I'm just like, okay, as someone that has actually interacted with this person, not racist, not misogynist whatsoever, or as someone that has watched most Comicsgate King streams, I can back up what you say, Mike Bear. None of these guys are like evil people, because you'd know if they were like if they were racist, misogynist.
Are you aware of the Daily Cost suit?
Yeah, I know. I'm actually looking at an article about that too, and I'm like, yeah. Nothing about the in the Kickstarter of this book, or like nothing in the trailer or any indication that you have given indicates that it's a racist book.
It's not.
It's clearly not.
This person who attacked me out of the blue, I'd never heard of her before, but she has her own book funding on Kickstarter.
Ooh.
While she called for all her minions to write Kickstarter and get my racist book removed, and she succeeded.
Wow. Well,
Your first problem was funding on Kickstarter. That was your first problem.
Well, everybody says that. I'm not in charge of fulfillment or funding. My partner, Chris Brawley, is. And Chris has his head screwed on straight. He knows the problems, and we're seeking a solution right now. And we'll see what happens with the next book. The next book, by the way, is Bronze Star. It's a supernatural Western. Pat Broderick penciled and inked completely by himself. It is the greatest work of Pat's career. Those of you who've seen the art I've been posting on Facebook and Twitter know.
I will be sure to check that out. It looks cool because I like the rest of your work, so I'm sure I'll enjoy this one. But yeah, I also want to talk about that because I also want to talk about the Daily Cost. As I'm like, it's funny because a lot of these people, because it seems more like this particular individual is just jealous of the attention. And because here's the thing, a lot of the criticism that gets to like EVS or you guys, it's like I watched that Mark Brooks debate with EVS where Mark Brooks is basically accusing EVS of being irrelevant. And I'm like, he actually accused EVS of being like irrelevant. And I'm like, I have 3 omnibuy of his work where he's relevant. You do covers for Marvel, dude.
That guy is such, I don't normally go this negative, but that guy is such a. I don't like saying that kind of language, but he is such a. Like seriously, lay out the lattes, brother. Lay out the lattes. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I don't like going that negative, but it's just that guy just pisses me off. But
yeah, it's like my point is like a lot of this seems to be just jealousy by people that can't reach to your or like jealous that you guys have like all this following that will follow you anywhere you go. So like, yeah, exactly. It's like that's why I admire you guys for like ignoring these people, because it's like, yeah, they're just jealous of what we've achieved. Because when you look at like EVS, also what that guy has done, what you have done, what Gabe has done, what John Malin has done, all those guys, it's astounding because they've essentially cultivated an industry where you don't have to be dependent upon Marvel or DC and the exploitative practices therein in order to do your own comics and have fun with it.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but many Marvel and DC creators have been complaining lately that they're not getting paid.
Oh, really? But
Yeah.
don't worry, Mike. The comic book industry is doing just fine.
Right.
Exactly. When the big two have problems with paying, no, it's not fine. It's not good. We're gonna add. Nick?
What's the first? In a normal thing, when the paycheck starts coming, what's the first thing you do? You go on the job boards. You know, when the paycheck doesn't come, they say, "Oh, there's an issue with payment." You go straight to the job boards because you know what's happening.
It's always been true that there are people that would give their left arm to work for Marvel or DC, and they'll take a job at slave rates just to have the credit. I don't know if that's true anymore, but it used to be true all the time, and as far as I know, it's still true. People will do anything to be published by those labels, and they'll take their marching orders, whatever the editor wants. And I think that's one of the reasons that the new books are no longer appealing, because they're filled with this woke trash, and people don't want woke. They've proven that time and again. That's another reason why the movie industry is in trouble. People don't want woke. They want to be entertained. That's the number one rule of entertainment: is you got to entertain.
Because it's called the entertainment industry. That's what it's called. It's in the name.
To build off of that, like when I actually interviewed Chuck Dixon once, and we kind of talked about this topic, and the way that he described it was people are treating comics like it's a transition, like comics used to be the end goal. Like for you, working for Marvel was the end game of your career. It's like that was supposed to be the top. Now it's just, I work at comics for a few years, and then I go to New York Times, Harper's Bazaar. I go to movies. I go to something else. TV. It's a stepping stone. So these people, they come into comics, and they, like you said, they have no history of the past, and they have no eye for longevity. So they do whatever they want. They don't care if they destroy characters. They'll make Iceman gay. They'll mind rape him. Sorry.
It's bad when they're starting to title trades of comics season 1. And I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing here, Bendis. I see what you're doing.
Also, I know, doing the limited route is a way to cover up bad sales.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you've seen this, but I'll flip through a modern comic and I'll find a page with 250 words on it in panels and caption boxes, and it's covering up most of the art, and I just lose interest in the book at that point.
That was literally one of the first lessons I learned when creating a comic. Like, I'm a writer, so it's like, obviously it's my inclination to fill up with words, but that was literally one of the first lessons I learned.
Yeah, because it's like,
you need to limit your word count to make the art shine. Like that was one of the first lessons I learned.
Yeah, because when you look at like an issue of Superman by He Who Must Not Be Named, Brian Michael Bendis, it's like word balloons all the way down every single panel, covering up Ivan Reyes's art. And I'm like, dude, I get it. You're a great writer. You're
a writer.
A writer. You're a writer. But I see, here's the thing about comics is that this isn't a novel. I want to look at the art too. I want to see the action depicted. I don't want to see like words. If I want to see that many words, I'll pick up a novel.
So
I have to say that words are necessary for comics. Because it's the words that bring the story alive, and you use them for characterization and sometimes to advance the plot. I have no love for wordless comics. They may be beautiful, but they take too little time to read, and they're forgettable. So when you dish your words out, you have to make every word count, and that's another reason I advise people to study the work of Karl Barks.
Yeah, because that's kind of my. I'm fully with you on that, Mike. Because like I'm with you on that. Like my philosophy. I tend to go for like the Ernest Hemingway approach, kind of similar, like doing the most with as few words as possible. That's kind of like my approach. It's kind of similar to what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's what you got to do, because ultimately, here's the thing: it's a balancing act, because the audience is not going to sit there for an hour to read a page, because they're trying to read all the text you put up there.
Oh, it's a turnoff, because you say, "I wish these words would get out of the way so I can see what the picture is."
And then you have the flip side, or the phenomenon that I call artists who write. Like, for example, Spider-Man #1, the Todd McFarlane. You read that issue? It's like almost all captions. There's like very little word bubbles. I've seen this.
It's essentially a silent comic.
Yeah, it's almost like the announcer is narrating a trailer for like most of it, and it's just like.
And
It's
Spider-Man
right
punched
phenomenon.
Doc Ock in the face and swung away to kiss Mary Jane. It's essentially that.
Another thing that I like to do in comics is to use quiet panels for characterization. For instance, I'll have a panel where a character just pulls out a cigar and twirls it. And in the next panel, he lights it very carefully, turning it around so it smokes evenly. In the third panel, he blows a smoke ring. And in the fourth panel, he speaks. And you need those kind of quiet moments that would happen in a movie because they reveal so much about character, how he handles the cigar. I mean, you can grip the cigar like an ice pick, or you can hold it genteel style with a pinky up, and that reveals a lot of stuff about it. And if you smoke your cigar like J. Jonah Jameson, it's like a machine gun on the front of a bomber. But if you smoke it like Sam Spade, it's hanging down out of the side of your mouth.
Yeah, it's body language. It's essentially, when you think about it, when you're doing a silent panel, body language is key because that's essentially your words of the book. Essentially, you're using the body to like say, here's how you can know about how this character sees the world just by how he like hold a cigar or how he handles a firearm or such.
Well, you mentioned the firearm. I think that's very important.
Yep, gotta practice trigger discipline.
That's
exactly.
People notice that. They notice if you're showing a picture of the hero clutching a pistol and his fingers on the trigger. People are going to say, this guy has never learned the basic lessons of guns, you know?
And that could be a good character development thing, like that like we talk about wordless kind of thing. Like if you have a character, the great way to show if they're an amateur with firearms is to have them not practicing good trigger discipline.
Well, not many people know that. I think it would miss most readers, but you could turn it into a teachable moment when another guy comes along and says, son, take your finger off the trigger unless you're intending to shoot somebody.
However, when you see like the Punisher depicted with his finger on the trigger, I'm like, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, that's not something you would do. That's for sure.
Or like Captain America, who I'm sure has handled firearms at some point. Like anyone that's
literally a soldier.
Yeah, anyone that's basically handled a firearm at some point in Marvel should know, keep your finger off the trigger unless you're actually going to take out someone or something.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's like a good idea for everyone.
Yeah, that's the first thing they teach you. Besides, like, don't point it at anything you don't want to destroy. But it's just
I'm not a gun person. Even I know this stuff.
Well, yeah, but and here's the thing: it's funny is that Marvel and the problem like Marvel writers is that they're so anti-gun that they'll depict anyone as finger on the trigger at all times, and I'll just go ahead and like sweep my gun across Captain America's face.
I don't think that's because they're anti-gun. I think it's because they're ignorant of the rules of firearms and unfamiliar with them.
And they don't want to learn them because even though they're writing a character use. That's why I think that like they took Punisher's guns away and gave him swords because they're like, okay, you don't have to worry about firearm rules. And I'm like,
accidental discharge.
Accidental discharge, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just like trying to turn Punisher into a discount Daredevil. I will not understand.
That's just Jason Aaron's writing.
I wouldn't know.
That's just Jason Aaron's writing. But,
these days, I mostly just read the comics people send me.
So, real quick, one thing I want to talk about is like, what did you think of the Thomas Jane Punisher movie?
Yeah, I gotta ask that.
I like Thomas Jane, but the short he made about the laundry was better than that movie.
Oh my! I was actually that's the Dirty Laundry short. I'll tell you that, Jared. I'll tell you about that.
I gotta check that out. I gotta check that out. But I will say my favorite part about that movie is when he does the monologue as he's gearing up, and he goes like, "There comes a time when like the traditional justice system is inadequate to dole out actual justice." And I'm like, that's pretty much in like a minute or so. You're summarizing the Punisher. There you go.
Well, yes and no, but you don't see Denzel Washington making any speeches.
Oh, true. That's true.
He communicates his intent through acting. I mean, the scene when he first goes into the Russian oligarch's office.
Yes.
And he offers him $9,800 to sell him the girl, and they just start rapping on him and insulting him in every way possible. And he turns to leave, and he opens the door, and then he shuts it again and turns around. I mean, there's so much there, just done silently.
Mm-hmm.
And then he zeroes in on what he sees. One guy with a gun, he sees the corkscrew. He sees the little sculptures that are skulls. And before he leaves, before he leaves and turns around, he stands at the guy's desk and he takes all the little glass skulls and turns them around so the skulls are facing the main mobster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, that is a good point. It's more subtle as opposed to saying, "Yeah, I'm the justice system" or something like that. It's like, "I am the law," to quote Judge Dredd. But yeah, I think I can kind of see that because I get what they're trying to do because they're trying to do like a thought bubble thing where like the character will like have a elaborate speech in their heads, but it doesn't translate well to movies.
Yeah,
that's my problem with like a lot of.
I hardly ever use thought balloons. Hardly ever. Every now and then, when I think it's important to the story, but generally, you want them to indicate their demeanor and their plans through little subtle things like actions. I mean, you can have the protagonist look at a handheld, hand-drawn map in his hand of the apartment he's about to enter, and that tells him he's doing his research, and he doesn't say, "All right, this apartment has 3 rooms. I got to clear the first 2." He's just looking at that map, and you get the message from that. I mean,
yeah, you assume he's thinking that in his head, but you don't exactly have to like say, "Okay, he's thinking. Okay, so I'm gonna go here, 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 and here, and here." You're like this dude's a professional, it's the Punisher.
Yeah, and honestly, it saves you a lot more space and time to just show him looking at the map, planning it, then you can go through and do the scene. And that way people know, like, oh, he figured it out beforehand. But you don't spell it out, but it's more just like establishing it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, I think it's a good place to leave it. Mike, it was a pleasure. So where can anyone find you and what do you want to promote?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Bloody Red Baron. Please follow me there. I'm running a GoFundMe to fund our lawsuit against the Daily Cause. It's called Mike Baron versus the Scum of the Earth on GoFundMe.
Very subtle. Very subtle.
That's
I'm
good.
on Facebook
I love that.
at the comics and novels of Mike Baron. And I'm on Substack, mikebaron.substack.com. And I write a lot about writing there. And I write about all sorts of things.
Awesome. I will definitely be picking up the Private American. It looks great. As someone that's like a huge fan of the Punisher, and it's pretty much that, except on the border, which I'm very interested in. So, and by the way, thanks to Nick for setting this up because he's connected a lot of my big time interviews. So on that note, everyone stay at work.
Mike, pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, dude. You're always welcome on the show.
Thanks. I'll be back.
Absolutely. Stay at work, everyone, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.